Hello, quarantine people. How are you all holding up on day 31, 32, maybe a year? I don't know how long it's been. But hey, so now we're almost into speech 3, descriptive speech. And I just wanted to say before I start, hope everyone is safe, staying at homes like you're told to. It's weird because I see people running around outside without any protection. And I don't know, people kind of underestimate this disease, but I hope all of you are safe. So, getting into this speech, for this speech, I will be doing a descriptive analysis on schooling systems. Basically, I will be describing how schooling systems came to be, specifically focusing on public schools. So, I'm gonna run you through the history, show you what happened in different times, and you'll discover something new about public schools that I have actually found out just in the past year when I was doing some research on it. So, hope this presentation will be interesting, and we'll dive straight to it. So, public schools. They are a form of education system all around the world that offer free education basically to anyone who can possibly get it. So they're usually liked for their accessibility, which makes them the best type of schooling systems to be given to a kid. But that has not always been the case. Public schools have had, as one might put it, a different objective in mind throughout their time they have existed. Throughout the past, one of the main objectives of public schools, if we go all the way back to 1600s and before that, have been actually used in the military system. The main example would be the Spartan military system, where students or kids and babies were taken away from their parents to be militarized. So basically, not kids, actually babies. A baby born and raised up to 5 years old by her mom would be taken away and then would spend the rest of his life learning combat skills, discipline, and survival. The main reason they thought they would do this and this would work was because if a child is cultivated from early age to be obedient, then the state would have power over the children. And then defenses. Now, as we go further into the future, the year is 1618, and the Prussian king discovers that this method was effective in the Spartan system. And so he adopts this method and decides to use it on his own military system. So again, the Second Republic school have been open for military discipline purposes. And so this way, they were able to create soldiers that were obedient, did not question authority. And so since the past, I would say a few hundred years, that have been the objective of public schooling systems throughout the world. And in past Germany, a famous person called Martin Luther, not that one, decided to implement public schooling for the sake of creating citizens that are obedient to the state. That was his main clause of agreement to the to the Republic of Germany for creating a public schooling system. Now, that was the main objective throughout different times because in past they needed citizens to be loyal to an authority that is the king. So this is all before democracy. But however, public schools have also been used as a form of social control throughout times of modern day ages. The main the main method through which public schools were introduced to America were by two people, mainly Calvin Stone and Horace Mann. Horace Mann, also known as the father of schooling systems in America, thought out this type of system when he traveled abroad and saw this being implemented in Prussia. And so he had direct communication with the king I told you about. And he talked to him and he was like, this might work in America. Don't know how he came up with that, but he decided to do it. So he brought back public schooling system to America and decided to open up public schooling for the sake of creating the need for public schools arose heavily when the industrial age kicked in a sense, and labor was something that was a major factor for those factories to provide their output product. So in a sense, the schooling systems became a form of supplying different kind of jobs a working force. And this is well expressed by Elwood Cubberley, who is a professor in Stanford, and he said that our schools are, in a sense, factories in which the raw products, children, are to be shaped and fashioned into products to meet the various demands of life. The specifications for manufacturing come with the demands of 20th century civilization, and is the business of the schools to build its pupils according to the specifications laid down. So what Coverley wanted to express mostly by saying this is that since the boom of the industrial age, most labor laws were applied where in a sense kids cannot be forced to work or before a certain age they can't work. And so the only way to meet this demand for supply of labor force were to educate students on specific targeted skills which they can use, which these companies can use. And so, in a way, public school was a structured way of education in which there's only a one pass system. Another researcher called Gilbert Gonzalez noted that throughout most of the communities that are low income and usually Spanish or colored communities, there had pre-division of three systems of division inside every public school. And those divisions were usually based on socioeconomic status. So when a student entered a school, it would depend on what kind of education he got based on his socioeconomic standard. So the rich students would get the most good type of education that involved white collar jobs and jobs that can be done easily, while the low socioeconomic families were actually given jobs in which they would follow through with their own parents and kind of give back into that circle. And so he noted that from all 665 graduates in this type of communities, 60 of them were hired as labor workers in factories, and 65 of them were skilled in some kind of technician. Well, there were no technicians back in those days, so I would say small type of labor jobs where it's usually tailoring, manufacturing, or fixing products. And so this type of control has been going on for a while throughout those past systems. And public educations have thought out to keep a lane for every person in a way and to make sure that there is some kind of flow of this distribution required. What I found interesting is that these are not like crazy assumptions or heinous types of thoughts being made, but these thoughts came from the actual people who were in the education system in some form of way. Another quote I found interesting was from the United States Commissioner of Education, William Torrey Harris. He was the former commissioner from 1889 to 1906, and he said that 99 students out of 100 are automata, careful to walk in prescribed paths, careful to follow the prescribed customs. This is not an accident, but the result of substantial education which, scientifically defined, is the subsumption of the individual. And so what he meant by this, I believe, he wanted to show that what public schools are putting out was a form of obedient and controlling person who would conform to the customs of what the future has to offer. And so in this way, public schools have been in a way creating an automata, which is like a machine that works automatically on what it's told to do. It's a point where it becomes a reflex instead of something you have to think through. And so contradict to what education is supposed to do and what public schools are supposed to apply, which is knowledge and the need for exploration, understanding. The role has been always the opposite of that. It has always been providing children with a structured and strict type of regimen which allows them to follow orders and prescribed paths. And I thought this was an interesting thing to figure out about public education because people's people who were leaders in that field are the biggest critics of public school itself. Now, this is not to take away from the fact that modern day public schools have achieved a lot and they have made a lot of progress in giving education to students, giving a lot of things, opportunities, if not a lot of things, to a lot of people. But yet, we have to understand that the same system is being used whether we see it or not, because public schooling systems have not changed over the past 60 years and they've been applying the same type of education. And the main objection to this is that in a time where everything is evolving, public school and schooling systems in general, this is not a direct attack on public school, but it's staying constant. And that's why most people don't believe that this degree we have is nothing more than just a piece of paper. And there's a good saying that says, degree is the most expensive toilet paper you can buy. I don't know if anyone has heard that, but like that's why people are going online to educate themselves, because this type of education is still thinking in the form of the past instead of the future. And big successful people like Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, and Bill Gates claim that there is no correlation between a person's education and the school and attending school. And so at this point, the school in a way is not adapting to the system of the world. It came a long way from what it was in the past, but it's kind of stagnant on where it is right now and where it is. And so I just wanted to point that out. There's an interesting evolution in public school, as you saw. Came all the way from being a controlling social factor to now educating people and giving everybody free access to education. But yet I think there's a long way for it to go. And it's not only up to the teachers and government to help out with this, but also the students to change how public schools are viewed. And that was my presentation. Thank you.